If you're American and still believe the world is dreaming of coming here to travel, you need to watch this video. Because the truth is they don't come anymore. And worse, many countries seem to be quietly removing the United States from their tourism maps. In 2025, from France to Japan, from Mexico to Turkey, international tourists are retreating. There's no longer the crowded scene in Times Square. No more multilingual voices in front of the White House. And according to the U.S. Travel Association, in the first quarter of this year alone, the number of French visitors to the U.S. decreased by over 61%, the lowest level since 2002. Why is this happening? How did a nation that was once a dream now become a destination to be avoided? In this video, we will explore 10 countries that are quietly but clearly boycotting American tourism. This is not just a temporary phenomenon, but could be a warning for the future image of the United States globally. One important thing: this video is not intended to criticize or blame. All information is compiled from public reports and reputable data sources. We just want to ask a question. Is America losing its leadership role, not just economically, but also in terms of its appeal and the trust of the international community? And now, let's begin with the first nation that once loved America, but is now quietly and thoughtfully turning away. They live right across the street and used to visit as if there were no borders. But now, the shortest distance has turned out to be the most difficult to cross. Why, after all, don't our northern neighbors visit the United States anymore? A seemingly small number, but one that leaves people speechless. According to a report from the U.S. Department of Tourism, the number of Canadian visitors to the U.S. has decreased by as much as 31% compared to 2023, the lowest level in the past decade. 1/3 stayed on the other side of the border. No objection. Don't speak. It's just that I can't take another step. Where does the real cause lie? While the climate, language, and lifestyle between the two countries are already similar, the sentiment of Canadian tourists is shifting. Neighbors are expressing concern about increasingly cumbersome entry procedures, with many being held for inspection for no clear reason. Besides that, social environmental anxiety is also increasingly prevalent. News about unrest and conflicts in communities makes many elderly people and families hesitant to visit major cities like Chicago, San Francisco, or Miami. And it could also be a feeling that's hard to put into words, a feeling that America is no longer as welcome as it once was. In a 2021 survey, over 67% of Canadians said they had dreamed of taking a road trip across the border to New York, Boston, or along the US West Coast. But by 2025, with the same question, only 22% chose the US as their preferred destination. Instead, they chose Europe, even Japan. A strange thing going further is more expensive, but it feels safer. Canadians are not loud. They didn't hold up signs or gather noisily. They just quietly stop like a friend who isn't angry but doesn't want to come over anymore. If even those closest to us hesitate to step through, is it because they have changed or because our own door is slowly closing? Have you ever met a Canadian during your trip? What did they say about America? And if they don't come back today, what do you think the reason is? Please share your story below. Perhaps what you've witnessed is a piece of a larger puzzle. And if even quiet neighbors like Canada are backing off, how will countries further away and more skeptical react? Let's move on to the second name, where distance is not just a choice but a clear statement. Australians aren't the type to make a fuss. They just packed their bags and flew straight to somewhere else. And this is like an unexpected twist that they didn't announce at all. According to data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics in 2024, nearly 840,000 Australians travelled to the United States. However, by mid-2025, that number had decreased by nearly 50%, despite there being no domestic economic crisis. They're still going, still spending, still passionate about exploring. The only thing is they no longer choose America as a place to explore. So where did they go? France, with the sophistication and romance that Australians are increasingly favouring. Japan for safety, cleanliness, and maybe sushi. And of course Canada, where they feel like America, but a little easier. A survey in Sydney shows that 7 out of 10 Australians would choose Japan or Italy over the US if they had to spend a significant amount on a trip in 2025. Notable. In March 2025, an Australian student studying abroad was detained at LA airport for nearly 8 hours simply for carrying research documents that were not clearly declared. The story spread across Reddit Australian media and became a wake-up call for thousands of families whose children were planning to study in the US. Although it's just an isolated case, it's the straw that broke the camel's back, causing caution to overflow. As the story spread, the feeling of discomfort began to outweigh the enjoyment. Perhaps for Australians, a trip to America was once a childhood dream. But right now they're choosing something other than dreams. They're choosing pleasant experiences. It's not because America is no longer attractive, and perhaps because the world out there is wider, cheaper, easier, and less stressful. Have you ever met Australian tourists in Vegas, New York, or Miami? What do you think makes them choose Tokyo or Paris now instead of returning to the US? Share your experience, and if you've ever chatted with them, what words have stuck with you the most? If Australians, who are known for being relaxed and open, also choose to stay away. So for countries that prioritize order discipline and premium experiences, would their reaction be different? Let's go to Japan, a name that makes the whole world curious about silence. No anger, no complaints. There was no official statement either. They just don't come anymore. And perhaps it is precisely that which resonates louder than any words. According to the World Tourism Organization, the number of Japanese tourists visiting the United States in the first half of 2025 decreased by over 53% compared to the same period last year. Meanwhile, the number of Japanese tourists visiting Canada, France, and Vietnam increased significantly. This didn't stem from a specific crisis, but was more like a quiet, deliberate decision that didn't need to be explained. After all, what would cause a polite nation like Japan to withdraw concerns about public disorder, overcrowded subways, spontaneous protests, and noisy conditions in major cities? Unstable service experience. Japanese customers are accustomed to second-by-second accuracy and were quite surprised to encounter a 40-minute wait at the airport just to go through screening or having to change hotels at the last minute due to booking errors because clear English support was unavailable. Most importantly, the culture of service and politeness, which the Japanese highly value, is sometimes no longer a strength in some tourist destinations in the US in the post-pandemic era. On a large Japanese travel forum, Tabi Tabi Forum, one user wrote, "I visited San Francisco in 2018 and found it to be a wonderful experience. But the last time I went, I didn't recognize the place anymore. It's no longer quiet, no longer safe, and I don't want to go back anymore." The article was shared over 20,000 times, without controversy or attacks. Just quiet words of agreement like, "That's right. I feel the same way. I'll choose Kyoto or Paris for my next vacation." Not stopping there, in a May 2025 survey by His Japan, Asia's leading travel company, the United States, fell out of the top 5 most desirable international destinations for Japanese people, for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Replacing the US is Canada. A quiet change, but deeply symbolic. What's thought-provoking here perhaps isn't the data, but rather the gaps. The Japanese don't need to object. They just needed to retreat in an orderly fashion, just like they always do. Everything quietly, seriously, and without looking back, unless they felt it was necessary. They didn't speak up because they had already set off for another place. Have you ever been to Japan? Have you met Japanese people in the US before? What do you think made them gradually choose to withdraw in an orderly fashion? Leave a comment, because sometimes it's viewers like you who witness things the press can't convey. If the Japanese, who are known for being quiet and respectful of etiquette, also choose to leave. So for countries that place a higher value on a stronger, more direct identity, will the reaction still be silent? Let's move on to the next section. Come to France and see how they are acting. The French love fashion, love beauty. I love being meticulous. And perhaps they love New York for those very reasons. But what about now? They still love fashion. They still love art. It's just that they don't come to America anymore. In April 2025, The French Ministry of Foreign Affairs officially advised citizens to carefully consider traveling to the United States, especially in crowded areas like New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. It's not a ban, it's not criticism. But it was a subtle message, very French. We felt something was out of sync. So do you know what made the French, who love American culture, become cautious? French media reported on numerous cases of tourists being subjected to thorough baggage checks and lengthy interrogations at US airports despite no clear violations. Some people call it a cold experience in a place they once thought was friendly. And then there was a growing cultural difference between two countries that were once very fond of each other. The French came to America seeking freedom, but felt as though they were being scrutinized. They hoped for openness, but encountered procedures, barriers, forms, and cameras. In the first 6 months of 2025, according to data from the Global Travel Index, France saw a decrease of over 65% in travel tours to the United States compared to 2023, the largest decline within the entire EU. The remarkable thing is, French travel spending has not decreased at all. They still travel, eat well, and stay at resorts, but they've switched to Greece, Spain, and Canada. The US is not losing customers. America is only losing favor. For the French, culture is not something to be debated, but something to be lived and felt. They might not be loud, but when they turn away, it's often because they feel unappreciated. Have you ever met French tourists in the US? What do they say about their experience here? And if they're now choosing Canada over California, is that just a trend or an unspoken message? Leave a comment, because sometimes the story you heard is exactly what the whole world is feeling. If the French, who are passionate about culture and sensitive to experiences, also choose to withdraw. So what's happening to the countries that once considered the US a dream destination for the whole family? Let's move on to the next name, where the wave that once swept over the West Coast is now turning back: South Korea. Waves of K-pop, K-dramas, and Korean students poured into the US as if it were a new promised land full of promise and opportunity. But now that wave is no longer crashing in, but quietly receding. According to a report from the Korean Association of Travel Agencies, the number of travel tours from South Korea to the United States in the summer of 2025 has decreased by over 60% compared to the same period in 2023. This was once the largest group of Asian tourists to California, New York, and Las Vegas. Now travel companies are shifting their entire campaigns to Europe, Canada, and Southeast Asia. Some companies are even canceling all their US tours for 2025, not because of cost, but because of a lack of peace of mind. In your opinion, what are the reasons why Koreans change so quickly? First, we must mention the increasingly strict visa policies, longer processing times, more complex document requirements, and a significant increase in visa rejection rates over the past year. Additionally, there is a concern about discrimination and uneven service at airports, hotels, and shopping centers, particularly for non-fluent English speakers. Some isolated incidents that went viral on social media made young Koreans feel less welcome than before, and they didn't hesitate to share that feeling publicly. They don't need to wait until they become the main character in the story. As soon as they see something wrong, they choose to go in a different direction. According to a 2025 survey by the Chosun Ilbo newspaper, the percentage of Koreans choosing the United States as their most desired destination has dropped to 6th place behind both Singapore and Vietnam. This is the first time in nearly 20 years that the United States has not been among the top 5 most popular countries for young South Koreans. The American dream hasn't disappeared. It was only replaced by other options that were more peaceful and easier to breathe. Unlike their parents' generation, who saw America as an opportunity for a better life, today's South Korean youth view the United States through a more realistic lens. I'm not coming to America to admire it. I came to be respected. And if that's not available, I'll choose somewhere else. They want clear service, professional attitude, fairness, and safety. And when the US, whether intentionally or unintentionally, fails to meet those standards, they simply leave. Have you ever witnessed the change in Korean tourists in the US? What do you think made a generation that once revered Hollywood now book tickets to Paris and Vancouver? Share your perspective so we can understand what's truly changing around us. If a dynamic young generation like Koreans has turned away, then how much more intense will the reaction be in countries where emotions more strongly influence actions, such as Brazil? Let's move on to the sixth name, where the samba laughter has now fallen silent in America. Wherever Brazilians go, they bring with them smiles, energy, and the sound of samba music. But if you've been paying attention lately, that music isn't playing in Florida anymore. According to the Brazilian Tourism Federation, in the summer of 2025, over 70% of US tours have been cancelled, especially those to popular states like Florida, California, and New York. An unannounced mass turnaround, but it left a void that domestic tourists couldn't fill. Unlike Canada, Japan, or France, Brazilians don't hide their emotions. They express themselves, they speak directly, they share publicly. Following an uncomfortable wave, many major travel companies in Brazil simultaneously announced the suspension of their US routes in 2025. One company even shifted its entire promotional campaign to Canada with the suggestive slogan, "We want to be welcomed, not just charged." Not everyone notices, but for Americans working in the tourism industry, they feel it distinctly. Shopping malls in Orlando, outlet malls in New Jersey, are devoid of Brazilian tourists, a group once known for impulsive shopping. Hotels in Manhattan's Little Brazil neighborhood are having to cut staff because of record low summer occupancy rates. Without them, the American tourism landscape would lose a vibrant color. Brazilians didn't turn away out of disgust. They turned away because they didn't want to go anywhere and feel like they were being looked at with suspicion. They chose places where their smiles wouldn't be mistaken for being too loud. The places where samba is still samba, not checked before entering the bar. Have you ever worked in the tourism industry in the US? Have you ever hosted Brazilian tourists? In your opinion, what makes a community so full of life hesitate right before the border crossing? Share your thoughts, because feedback from insiders is sometimes even more valuable than statistics. When a country withdraws due to emotion, that's something we can listen to and improve. But if a country withdraws because it feels the policy is no longer in line with the values they respect, then the issue is no longer just about hospitality. Let's head to Saudi Arabia, a place that once burned money in Vegas but is now looking towards other destinations. Saudis don't travel just for the price. They didn't book a room, they booked a floor. And if they stop, it's not because they don't have enough money, but because they feel it's no longer worth spending. Luxury resorts in Las Vegas, flagship stores in Beverly Hills, golf courses in Arizona. Everyone was used to names from the Middle East. First-class flights, private suites, spending without looking at the price. But from mid-2024, the flow of VIP guests from Saudi Arabia began to thin out. And by the second quarter of 2025, the number of visitors from this country to the US will have decreased by as much as 58% compared to pre-pandemic levels. They don't stop traveling. They just choose different destinations. Those destinations could be London, with its old-fashioned hotels and personalized service. Dubai, a place that always knows how to roll out the red carpet for those who know how to spend money. And even Geneva, the Maldives, or Tokyo, where tranquility and class still go hand in hand. The US, once a destination for luxury experiences, is now being questioned. Is it still worth it? A piece of information that Western media has paid little attention to. Since the end of 2024, some travel and media companies in Saudi Arabia have stopped promoting tours to the United States in their premium packages. The reason isn't political. It's that the experience no longer meets upper-class standards. No scandal. There is no condemnation. It's just the silence of the unspoken. But their words are very clear. What caused that shift to happen? Visa procedures are considered cumbersome and inconsistent, even for those with clear records. Uneven premium service. Not a few people feel they are paying $5,000 a night, but receiving an experience worth only $500. The environment is no longer as private and absolutely safe as they expected. When people can choose anywhere in the world, they will choose the place where they feel silently respected. For the super rich, travel is not just for relaxation, but also a part of their personal identity. And if a place no longer reflects the sophistication, class, and privacy they desire, they don't react. They just pivoted. and took the budget with them. Have you worked in the luxury service industry before? Have you ever seen guests from the Middle East choose the US and then gradually disappear? In your opinion, what caused a place that was once a symbol of luxury to no longer attract the super rich? Share a story you've witnessed, because sometimes that change doesn't come from the market, but from the eyes of each person who leaves. If the wealthiest people are also choosing to go elsewhere, then for the most populous country, the question is, do they still want to come? Come to India, once expected to be the new wave of international tourists. But right now, it seems the tide is receding before it can come in. Many people used to call this the golden decade for Indian tourism abroad, and America, with its technology centers, top universities, and bustling cities, seemed like an indispensable destination on that journey. But strangely, before the wave could even crest, it receded. According to the World Tourism Organization, the number of Indian tourists to the US decreased by over 68% in the first half of 2025 compared to 2023. A figure that has puzzled many experts because the average income of India's middle class is increasing and the demand for international travel is expanding significantly. At the same time, the number of Indian tourists visiting Singapore, the UK, and the UAE skyrocketed. What caused the absence to occur as soon as the door began to open? Visas, the first step of the journey, are currently a major obstacle. Processing times are months long, and many cases are rejected for no clear reason. For many families, it's not just about waiting, but also about feeling unwelcome from the very beginning. International students who often lead family trips are starting to change direction, choosing Canada, Germany, or Australia, where they feel safer with fewer barriers and a more relaxed atmosphere. Notably, over the past 2 years, many US businesses have invested heavily in marketing campaigns targeting Indian tourists, even opening Hindi support services at major shopping centers. But after only 1 to 2 tourist seasons, those signs gradually disappeared. Not because they changed their strategy, but because no one was coming to read anymore. India has no shortage of people willing to spend. There are also many people who love America, through music, movies, technology, and education. But when trust is eroded, even by small repeated experiences, that path gradually fades, and people choose easier, more ordinary journeys, where a nod at the airport is easier to come by than a shake of the head. Is the world speaking, not with words, but with actions? And are we listening in time, or do we still think silence is a sign of support? Have you worked at an airport hotel or in the service industry in areas with Indian tourists? Do you notice the change? In your opinion, what caused that wave to recede, even though it once promised to be bigger than ever? When young, dynamic countries, like India, choose to withdraw. We're not just losing tourists, we might be losing the future of a long-term relationship. And the biggest surprise is that strong withdrawal could come from your oldest friend. Can you guess which country that is? There are relationships that don't need to be named. The US and the UK have long been considered natural allies, but even the closest people sometimes leave without saying goodbye. In the first half of 2025, the number of British tourists visiting the US decreased by 44%, the lowest level since 2009. This was once the second highest number of visitors to the United States, second only to Canada. They love New York like LA adore Boston, and used to consider traveling to America as commonplace as a train trip to Paris. But now, London is turning away, and turned away in an ominous silence. Why is an old friend becoming distant? Many people share that they have visited the US many times, but recently they find the US entry procedures are no longer as friendly as before. Travel costs are increasing, while the experience is no longer considered commensurate with the value, especially in major cities. The British, known for their courtesy and discretion, find America increasingly noisy, tense, and unstable. An article in The Guardian described that feeling with a thought-provoking sentence. We came to America to enjoy ourselves, but sometimes we feel more like we're being tested than invited in. The shift isn't in the words, but is evident in booking data, search trends, and media preferences. Travel agencies in the UK are seeing a significant increase in tours to continental Europe, particularly Portugal, Greece, and Croatia. One of the largest hotel chains in the UK has cut its US advertising budget by 50%, shifting entirely to staycation content, domestic travel. They didn't say America is no longer attractive. They just don't mention it as the first option anymore. Perhaps the British didn't retreat out of anger, but simply because they no longer felt at home. And when familiarity fades, people don't argue. They just move on to a different journey. When even old allies become indifferent, perhaps it's no longer a misunderstanding. For many people, travel is a vacation. But for a country, tourism is a mirror. A mirror reflecting how the world sees you. Is there still trust? Is there still admiration? Is there still a desire to set foot there and stay? 9 countries. 9 ways to withdraw. From gentle to lively. From silent to public. But the biggest question isn't who left. It's, is America still a place people dream of? Or has it become a place they have to carefully consider before stepping foot in? Have you ever worked in the tourism industry? Have you ever met international tourists? What changes do you see in how they arrive or leave? Leave a comment. Because your story, it could be the perspective the whole world needs to hear. If you're interested in what's changing deep within society, the economy, and people, please subscribe to the channel, because we don't just tell stories, we also reflect with you on where the world is headed. This video was created for the purpose of analyzing and reflecting on international tourism trends based on public data and information from the press and media. All opinions are personal and do not represent any organization or country. We have no intention of criticizing, blaming, or misrepresenting any party mentioned in the content.